This is a virtual interaction series with senior men and women who paved the way for change in their sphere. We are honored to launch this series with Aruna Raje Patil, who's thank you so much for joining us today, who's here with us. She's the Indian film industry's first woman technician. And as many of you know, she's an acclaimed director. A little bit about Aruna Raje Patil. She's, like we told you, she's the first woman technician in Bollywood. And she has directed films like Rihai, Shak, Vairabi, and many others, including the recent Firebrand on Netflix. So that shows you her range. She's moved from the big screen to web streaming. The recipient of 5 national awards, Aruna's is a story we can all draw inspiration from. She has had to bear the pain of losing her only daughter to cancer, but she chose to stay strong and carry on. And today, standing strong in her 70s, she is still making films and she is also a life coach. She will talk to us a little bit about that. Aruna lives in Mumbai and she is growing older every day in the most active way possible, which is completely in line with what Silver Talkies believes in and does. So a little bit about us, for those of you who are joining us for the first time. Silver Talkies is a Bangalore-based social enterprise that has built a community of active and engaged older adults. We run www.silvertalkies.com, which is an online magazine for 55 plus. And we also hold exclusive events and activities for senior citizens across Bangalore. We run an exclusive club for them called Silver Talkies Social. We are also a platform for senior citizens to get connected to various services which are there for them. Going online due to the lockdown has helped us to reach out to older adults across India. We no longer have to be, since we can't do physical events in Bangalore, we have gone online and now anyone from across India and the world can join us. So far, we have held talks on mental health, nutrition, and wellness. And we have also done live skill building classes. If you wish to join more online sessions like this, which we call them Silver Talkies Live, do email us on connect@silvertalkies.com. Before we start this, if you have questions for Aruna once we start talking, please put them in the chat box and we shall take them in the last 10-15 minutes of this interaction. We'll try to cover everything. If you have anything beyond what we haven't spoken, you can put them in the chat box. So Aruna, let's start from the beginning of your journey. The first question I would like to ask you is, you set out to become a doctor and move to films. Since that is quite a jump, how did you discover that you were more suited to the film industry or vice versa? And where did your passion for cinema come from?
All right, before I say that, first of all, thank you for having me on this. And thank you everybody for joining us and giving us your precious time. So answering your question, Reshmi, my mother was a film buff. As kids, we used to see a lot of movies. Like in a week, we must have seen 3-4 movies, any number of movies, And what would be there is, it was regardless of, we lived in Bangalore those days, and regardless of language, first we'd see the Hindi movies, then we see the Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, English, whatever. And I was really obsessed with movies. Now, the other thing that how I got into that was also, I was a voracious reader. By 13, I'd read Shakespeare cover to cover. Whatever, how much I understood is a different matter, but all the classics and everything, I read a lot. I was a bookworm. And my imagination was fired by the reading I did and the movies I saw. And, my siblings and I, we made up our own productions. We called it AUSS Productions, AUSS, A for Aruna, U for Uma, U for Uma, Satya and Sheel, my 2 brothers. So, and we used to play games, and we actually made up our own stories. I remember we had a 4-post and we'd like a pirate, land ahoy and playing pirates with our wooden sword. We'd fight and we'd do so much drama stuff. And, it was like crazy because this is something I just wanted to do. And even watching movies, I remember sometimes we would be in the car, it might be getting late for a movie. I'd be sitting just behind the driver near the door, holding onto the door handle. The minute the car reached the theater, I would just open the door and rush out. And then I'd go all the way up, running up the stairs and just get into this theater and stand in the aisle and continue to watch, because and I wasn't in any hurry to get to my seat. I just wanted to make sure that I caught every frame of the film. So, and sometimes we'd be getting late, and it was so crazy. I'd learned how to chant Om Namah Shivaya, and I would say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, let the picture not start, Om Namah Shivaya. It was madness. I was so crazy about movies. So obviously I wanted to do that. But girls from good families in those days never went into movies. So being a topper, being a good student, I went for medicine. But then the best thing that happened was, for me, I failed in my anatomy exam. And then that was a kind of realization, this is really not for me, and I want to do something else. So my mother, the very dynamic person, she took me out of the medical college and put me in film institute, and that's how my journey of actually being in movies began. First of all, thing, wherever I went, people would just stop working and stare at me. And there were times if I was in the laboratory or doing editing or something like that, they'd open the door and say, ladke hai, ladke hai. Now, I'm not an animal in the zoo. I mean, and ladki kya karegi, and all that kind of talk, that sort of thing. They would ogle, they would try to touch, jokes, sleazy propositions all the time, And I ended up, as a girl, I didn't even want to look nice or pretty or anything. I would be in my jeans and t-shirt. That was my regular outfit. I had my short hair, never took any trouble to dress up or anything like that, because it just wouldn't work. As it is, I had enough problem. I thought if I dress up, I'll have more problem. And it became worse after my divorce. So, what people seem to think that any woman who's single may be available, and they make all kinds of propositions. And film industry, just like many other places, it's really bad for this, unwanted attention. The second problem was, men don't like to take orders. So, people wouldn't listen until, and had to work 1,000 times more. Initially, I was working with my ex-husband as a team, and they wouldn't listen, until they came to know that I know my job. And to prove that, I had to work literally 1,000 times harder than him. And when they got it, they started listening to me and having a huge amount of respect and all that. And I had to actually, it's almost like building it brick by brick, the listening, the respect and all. And the other huge problem was, there were no toilets for women anywhere. I mean, it's just so, all the studios and everything, it was very, very difficult. And, I had to use a men's toilet sometimes, and I had to have somebody standing outside and guarding, so nobody came into it. And there were times when we went for shooting, it was very hard. And that's what, I created a problem for myself. I would leave the house at 6 or 7 in the morning and come back at 12 o'clock at night, or sometimes even 3 in the morning. And I taught myself not to drink water. So you can imagine what can happen. And a few years later, I had massive problems. I had to deal with it. And now I have to drink a lot of water. Otherwise, your kidneys are like gone. So that was another thing. Thankfully, it wasn't too much of a damage or anything. But then, sometimes you go in the field, sometimes you go behind bushes. I mean, a girl has no, place to go. So that was another very, very big problem. So that was how it was.
That's quite horrifying to hear, especially in today's context, when everything, we talk so much of equal rights. So the fact that they did not build something as basic as toilets for the women working in the industry, it's really hard to believe now.
Yeah, you won't believe it. Only the actresses had in their dressing rooms. But, we had a woman prime minister, and later on a woman president, but it took a man to start creating toilets. Hello, now, just recent years. I mean, why can't we have toilets for women, whether it's the village women or working women or any women? I mean, that was a problem.
Well, we are glad health-wise you're doing okay. So one of the things... So one of the things I'm sure many people want to ask you is, you worked with stalwarts of the Hindi film industry, from Naseeruddin Shah to Shabana Azmi to Hema Malini, whole lot of them, Vinod Khanna. So are there, we know that your autobiography is there, but for those who haven't read that, are there any anecdotes you'd like to share? Maybe, things that have touched your heart, which you really remember all these years down the line.
Okay, I'll tell you, when I first filmed, we were making this film, Shabana's character was a middle class woman. And in those days, in the 50, 60, 50, 60s and all that, 60s, 70s, people wore something called a house coat or a dust coat. Many people would, the senior citizens or people, now it's not there any longer, but people would wear those things. And even if you were a sari wearing person, you took off your sari and you wear it on your petticoat and your blouse, because you didn't want to walk around only with petticoat and blouse. So it's not quite common. And Shabana was saying, I have never seen that. I don't know what this is. How can I wear this and all? We said, but middle class Maharashtrian women, they do wear that in the South also. I mean, and then she said, but how? And we said, okay, we'll give it to Shaw. We'll see what to do. And one afternoon, we just took her to a person's friend's house. It was across the building. There was another state. And we said, let's just go. In the middle of the afternoon, we went and rang the bell. And the lady of the house opened the door in a house coat. So Shabana said, yes, I got it. I'm not, because you have to do your research. Whatever you tell people what to wear or how to look or how to speak or whatever it is. So that's one thing I remember even today. The other very important thing I remember was when I was making Rihai, there was no money, and I had, my divorce was going on when the film was being made. There were very difficult times. I had to run around, somehow raise money. I'd got a 10 lakh loan from NFDC, but it's still very difficult because the film was much more expensive. And I remember during dubbing, that last lap of dubbing, I was dubbing with Vinod Khanna, and I was very preoccupied. And he says, "Kya baat hai? What's wrong with you? ऐसा तू चुप क्यों है?" I said, "नहीं नहीं विनोद, कुछ नहीं है, ऐसे ही मैं कुछ सोच रही थी." "बोलना क्या बात है?" I said, "No, अभी print निकालना है, the final print." Our lab was in Madras. Those days we used to call it Madras. And I said, "वो लाना है, तो मैं सोच रही थी वो पैसे का कुछ इंतजाम करना पड़ेगा and all." And मुझे, so he said, "कितना चाहिए print के लिए?" I said, "Kitna hai hota hai?" I said, 30,000. And you know what? He just went into the car. He went outside, got 30,000 and gave me. I said, "Tu le le." I said, "No, Vinod, I can't take from you. Already doing me a favor. Tum itna sab kar rahe ho. You're acting in my film and you're whatever you're doing." He says, "No, keep it payable when able. Just take it." And I was so touched. I mean, first I was not even telling him what my problem was, and then when he forced me to tell, this is what he did. And he gave me the money, and of course I paid him back later. But that was amazing, and many things like that. Then I remember very funny incidents with Hema Malini. Now, this, you've seen Rihai, or whoever has seen Rihai, it's about a whole lot of women. It's not just one woman. It starts with one woman, it goes to a second woman, a third woman, and finally the whole story is taken up by Hema Malini's character. So in the beginning, when we're shooting, Hema Malini was at the back doing some work in the background and all. She said, "Aruna ji, kya ho raha hai? Close up nahi, mere ko apne piche khada kar diya. Ye kaisa, main kya karu, kya ho raha hai?" And all. I said, "Hema ji, don't worry, aapka turn aayega. Picture थोड़े थोड़े build up करते करते पूरा आप ही story carry करेगी, don't worry," and all that. And finally it did happen. So, these are the funny things that you have to deal with them. You don't know what will come up. So, yes.
It's a lot of people management also, direction.
Yeah, you need those people skills. To be a director, you need very good people skills, excellent people skills. You have to listen and then see how you can actually solve their problem. And you can't be harsh, especially with actors, you can't be harsh with them. You've got to be gentle. You've got to, we say handling them with kid gloves and take care of them so that they give you what you want in your shot. Because it's a shot in the end.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We want to talk to you a little bit about your life's journey. You haven't had, if I can put it that way, a very easy life. You've dealt with your grief, loss, you've had a divorce. What gave you the power to move on, and what led to your transformation? Could you talk a bit about that?
I think somewhere, even growing up, even as a girl, I had a very strong sense of responsibility. My father was a freedom fighter. He was in politics later, but when he saw this politics was, there was corruption was happening, he just moved away to a village and started a girls' school in the village and so on. My mother was doing a lot of social work, and though she was involved in politics, but there was a lot of sense of responsibility somehow. And I also had a strong commitment to make things work. Basically, I don't like messy things. I like to keep things clear, especially relationships. Now you might find my desk is cluttered, but there's a method to that madness. In that madness, in that clutter, I know what is where, and I've got a way of handling it. But with the relationships, you cannot mess up. I think maybe that's a Libran trait, wanting to have balance. And the one thing that really helped me transform was, this whole thing about judging. I think even for senior citizens or as we grow older, it's a very important issue. We keep judging all the time because we are, designed to judge. But what we need to remember is that it's a judgment, it's my opinion, it's not the truth. The problem is when relationships go bad is because we believe it's the truth and not an opinion. And when I learned not to judge and relate it to as an opinion, that made a very big difference to my life, the kind of, so I keep disciplining myself because judgment is very natural. It's a automatic thing. It's a default thing. But then that's not the truth. There is another side to it. So when I look at those things, also what was important was to be able to let go. That's something I learned to also let go. I was in a program called the Landmark Forum, and there I'd heard this conversation that suffering is a choice. And I was very upset. I said, how can suffering be a choice? Nobody wants to suffer. But what happened was that they said, think about it. And you're choosing to suffer. Then I realized I'm holding on to something that happened. When my marriage broke up and my daughter had died, my marriage broke up. And I was thinking my husband and my friend who had gotten together were responsible. They spoiled my life. That's how it occurred for me. And I had to let that go. And what I did was, it was the biggest transformation for me was that conversation I had with my ex-husband and my ex-girlfriend, who both of them had gotten married by then after the divorce. So I phoned up and I said, I do not blame you for what happened. I take full responsibility for my life. Be happy. It was the most difficult conversation in my life. My hands were trembling, my voice was quivering. But having said that, I found my freedom to be able to forgive and move on and take responsibility for one's life. So that has allowed me to really create what I want, how I want, live my life the way I want. And the best thing was it gave me freedom and happiness. At that time, after those conversations, I can't tell you, it was magic. I mean, I said, sky is not the limit. I was so happy just to be able to free. And not only that, I think I freed them also and just let them free also from the guilt. I hope they don't feel that. But, I just said, it's okay. It's my problem, but how my life goes. So this made a difference.
That's a lot for many of us to learn from, and we're sure it must not have been easy, but you still went ahead and did it.
So yeah, it was not easy, but you want to achieve something that has got, you have to, you want to play, you have to get your hands dirty, you have to come on the field, you have to get out sometimes, you have to fall, you have to fail, but you have to, if you want to do it, you can do it, and it's possible to achieve.
Great, wonderful to know that. So we wanted to ask you a little bit about, your filmmaking journey. You started from the no toilet thing where you must have really worked hard on, and the entire filmmaking technique has also seen such a change. So
yes, that's right.
From the screen, you have moved to Netflix, which is web streaming, which gives you
yes.
a lot more creative liberties. So tell us about that. How's the journey been?
Actually, when we made Firebrand, we didn't make it for Netflix. We made it like a regular film for a theatrical release. But when Netflix saw it, we went to them for digital release and for digital marketing, whatever. And they saw it and they liked it. They said, we take the whole thing. So then they ended up taking the whole thing as an original. Now, the thing is, it's not very different now. A lot of OTT platforms, there's a lot of freedom. I mean, you'll see a lot of sex and violence, which you don't get to see in a theater. Because people, this is a one-to-one platform, I should say. And people can get more intimate and more other stuff, more violent, more whatever. And that's what's available. And also the stories are much faster paced. And you have to, the whole point of whatever way you're working, in whichever period you're working, you have to keep reinventing yourself. If you want to be I mean, I would say not just for a filmmaker, but even in life, even for us as, as we grow older, we have to reinvent ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be misunderstood and we will misunderstand other people also. So, and we'll find ourselves a misfit. So the whole secret to whether you're at work or whether in your relationships, personal, professional, you can't afford to be rigid. You have to move on and reinvent yourself. And like, earlier we used to actually work on film, which was piece of celluloid. We used to have it in our hands. We used to actually cut it with a scissors or a splicer, little machine. And now then it became something else and became digital and so on. And now, everything is so much of virtual reality now. We have to get used to it, and we have to change with the times. Because if you go against the winds of change, then it's not going to work, because we get alienated otherwise. And I think this is for people growing older. Don't get alienated. Just go with the flow. Just just don't be rigid. I mean, just reinvent yourself. Why not every few years, but why not every day? You have to reinvent. Otherwise, you can connect to children, you connect to teenagers, you connect to young people, old people. You can connect to anyone then. To say which is the most difficult, but most memorable, because every film has got its special memories that you cherish. But I think the hardest time in my life was when I was making Rihai. My divorce was going on, and there was no money, and but I don't know, it was magical in the way people came out to help, and people actually, just work through whatever I was dealing with, work through the film. And I think if I had to do it today, I doubt if I could do it. I think it was survival, so much about survival at every, physically, emotionally, mentally, till every way it was, you just had to make it happen. And that survival makes you invest that kind of energy, that kind of unstoppableness, you know when you have to do that. And I think everybody has it, but a lot of people give up quite easily, unfortunately, and that's the sad part.
Great. If you were to start your career now, in today's day and age, and things are different, how do you think it would be? Would you still go through those ups and downs, the struggles, or would it be a smoother ride? What do you think?
I think it would be a smoother ride, for one, because there's so much more space for girls to work now. Those days it was very difficult because there were no girls except as actresses and hairdressers or something like that. And even today, it's not that the girls are not getting sexually harassed. They are getting, there is sexual harassment. But today you can complain, you can get help, you can get legal redressal, all that is possible. And then girls also have a choice. I mean, things have opened up a lot, whether it's corporate or film industry or wherever. The girls have a choice to say yes or no. And it's okay if, if they involved in, get intimate consensually or whatever it is, but they can also turn a man down. But these are in certain spaces. But if you go to a public space, like you're on the road or in your some transport system like trains or cabs or buses, there's no, or restaurants, bars, there's no saying what might happen. So it's still not that safe for a woman. But there are some areas, some territories that she's made herself comfortable with. She can either give it back as good as she gets, or she can deal with it in some way that she gets justice, or she can flow with it. So all this has become possible.
Thank you for that, Aruna. Is there a story that you have always wanted to tell and haven't made into a movie yet?
Yes, I've always wanted to tell one story. It's a non-linear story, and people will call it an art film perhaps. A story which is mixed up with reality. It's got dreams, it's got past lives. And I don't see it happening. I mean, everybody wants something that will bring back a lot of money, or at least bring back the investment. Now, there are films which are made like that. There are films people have made, but they've been the lucky ones. I think they found the space somewhere, somebody gave them the kind of money, or they were able to put together that kind of money. But I don't know anyone who would fund a film like that. And that's my dream film. I don't know if I'll ever make it, but that's something I would make. Again, it's a woman-oriented film. And it's about being a filmmaker. You know how we play with people's, you know, we take characters, we make situations, and we are playing God. We play with people's lives. And the question was, does it cost you? Does it, what does it mean? You know, so that's the film basically.
Now that sounds quite dreamy. What would be your dream cast if you were to make this movie? Who would you choose?
I don't have a dream cast, but if Smita were alive, she was a very close friend of mine, Smita Patil, and I'd probably taken her. But now Smita not being there, I don't know who will be the person, because I don't know. There are possibilities, of course, but yeah.
You've told us about some wonderful actors. Are there people who have been challenging to work with? If you don't want to take names, it's fine. But what are some of the challenges that you've faced, in your directorial journey?
Challenges, you know, there have been, like, for example, you know, there are various kinds of challenges, people understanding a character, for example, or, you know, sometimes an actor wanting to change the script and me not wanting to change the script. So that was a challenge, and I had to convince the guy over and over again that this won't work. On with my actor, and he was like, no, but the end should be. I said, we've already approved the script, we've already got this, and this ending is not going to change, so what do you want to do about it? And I just stood side. I said, we are, this is the only way it will go. And whatever suggestions he'd been giving, I mean, whatever I could adjust, I've taken. I mean, you know, we do take suggestions from everyone, whether it's a light boy or a spot boy, or it's definitely an actor or your assistant or maybe the cameraman. We listen to people and see what's good for the film. But if something goes against your film, then you can't change the end of the film to, you know, support whatever. So then after that, then, you know, after a point, the guy said, all right, I'm a professional, I will do as you say. I said, thank you so much, now let's do it. And he delivered, he did a good job, he was a good actor, he did a good job, but he just wanted the whole thing to tilt to his character. It was a woman's character, which was the main character. And but he got a lot of adulation for that. He got a lot of credit for what he did, and he was a good actor. But at times, only the director has the whole vision. And you have to listen to I mean, very often it has happened, the cameraman will tell you, Array, it happened, I know, years and years ago, in my early days, in the early 70s, Govind Nihalani, and we'll make a documentary with him. And he said, "Na itna acha lagta hai, ye shot yahan se lenge." I said, Govind, ye mere pattern mein nahi fit ho raha hai. Agar lege to bhi main nahi use karungi. I won't use it. He said, nahi, le lete hain. I said, all right, we'll take it, but I won't use it, and I'll give it to you. And I was so sort of little naughty, wicked, whatever mean, I don't know. But actually, when the thing came, I gave him the shot and said, ye tera shot hai, le le. But main nahi use kar rahi hu because mera fit nahi ho raha hai. So these were the early growing years like that. So there any kind, sometimes the challenge is money. Oh, I must tell you this. At one point of time, we were shooting in Pune and we needed an ambassador car, a white ambassador car, and this actor was supposed to do that scene in the evening, and he was supposed to go back to Bombay. And we said, the producer go, subah se push rahe, morning we are saying, where is the car? Where is the car? You still haven't got the car. The guy has to go back. This is the last day of the shoot. We have to have the car because the car was required. And he kept dilly-dallying and saying, aa jayega, but this is not showing up, and the sun was about to go down. Then finally the car, white ambassador comes. And we do the scene, and suddenly a whole lot of people land up there. Ye to churaya, ye to chori ka gaya, to gaadi leke bhag gaya. The producer had actually stolen the car and brought it for the shoot. Can you believe it? I mean, you're worried, sun will go down, kya hoga, mera shot reh jayega, very important hai. That sort of thing. And the producer actually went and stole the car from somewhere. And those guys managed to come to that place and find it.
That's quite I'm sorry I had to laugh in mute because I was not.
This is crazy. I mean, you know, film mein to bahut crazy things happen. There are too many stories, crazy things like that. I remember in Rihai, there was another story, Harish Patel. Now, you see what happens when we go on outdoors. People in that unit, go around to see where they will get cigarettes, where they will get liquor, where they will get girls. Unfortunately, if they're going to go for a 1 month schedule, people go and find where they can do what they want to do. And of course, Gujarat mein to problem hi tha, no drinking, no nothing. And I said, look, you got to manage your own stuff. And one of the actors, he went into the village. It seems he was teasing the girls. So the villagers came one day with their sticks and with their knives and everything and said, "Usko bahar bulao, usko hum nahi chhodenge, usko kaat dalenge," and all that. And we didn't know where the actor was. And whatever liquor, every day this actor would drink and lie somewhere. God knows where he would be. Next day, somebody would find him and bring him back, wherever. So he'd wake up at whatever time, and his dinner also would be kept in a dabba somewhere, and he'd somehow get to his room in the night, or the assistants would take care of it. So when these villagers came and were demanding, thankfully we couldn't find the actor, because we didn't know where daru pi ke kahan gir pada tha, pata nahi. But that was a real problem to handle that, and said, we don't know where he is, and we warned him next day, you can't do these things in the village, so all kinds of things come up.
That's yes, all kinds of things truly. Before we ask you a few more questions, there are some questions which have come in. I would like to ask you that. This is from Supraja Shankar. She says, hi, I'm a female assistant director and also studying in a film school. I would like to know if Aruna Raje could give any guidance to upcoming female director and writers.
Well, I would say, you must know your stuff. If you want people to listen to you, at least you must know your stuff. That's very important. So if you're in a film school, that's already good news. You're already plus plus, knowing your stuff. And secondly, being able to negotiate in a sense that understand what people actually want, in terms of work. I mean, strictly in terms of work, what they want, what they need. And, be able to do that. If you want to go independent, then you must make sure, I think you should make the effort, pitch your films, make your short films, and then gradually build up to making a feature film. But if you want to work with someone, that's fine, but make sure that, you are taken care of, that there's a place, and it's not just eye candy. Because what the people say, even in a lot of Bollywood movies, they say, "हाँ, एक लड़की तो unit में होना चाहिए, क्यों अच्छा लगता है?" That should not be a reason why you should be hired. अच्छा लगता है. You should be hired because you know your job and you can deliver. So you have to take care of all these things, and and actually work with complete professionalism. That's very, very important, because you have to show you are a cut above the rest. You have to be on time, do 100% work, do the work as it's meant to be done, complete integrity. And that's one of the things that's just, worked for me, because doing things on time, doing them well, doing them right. And, that's why whatever films I've made in these 50 years, all films have been completed, nothing in the cans, all films have been released, and all films have been made in time and budget. So that's very important. And to have honest communication also, I think. I don't know if this answered your question, but I hope it has.
Supraja, we hope it answers your question. The second one is from Mysore Prasanna. Says she's such a role model for womanhood. Do you think that Indian cinema has come of age?
Well, actually, Sanna, I don't know what coming of age is anymore, because every few years you think it's coming of age, chalta rehta hai. As time goes, I've heard this coming of age for a long time, for 50 years or more. I've heard every time a few years go, it's coming of age again. So I don't know, but people are still there's still a dichotomy, there's still a duality between business and art, cinema as business or cinema as art. And that's the biggest problem that I think all filmmakers are dealing with. Whether you need cinema to communicate something, to express yourself, or you want it just as a business product. I mean, that's something that is, I don't know when it will come of age, in the sense where there'll be total freedom to do what you want to do and make your cinema the way you want to make, because you're all the time pushed to make something that will sell. And going digital has made it a little easier, but not that much. Not if you are a storyteller, not if you want to make a film for a whole lot of audience. Well, I think there's a lot of improvement.
Yes, please continue.
I think there's a lot of improvement in the way the senior citizens are portrayed. But I think they have not covered the whole spectrum. There's a lot of spectrum still to cover. You know, they've just begun. I think as far as that goes, it's just a little bit. Otherwise, the earlier senior citizens in the earlier films, they would be either coughing, they would always be sick. The poor old mother would always be poor and sick, and the father would, be whatever, and sort of literally. I mean, there's old stereotyped images. Thankfully, those images are gone now. you know, People may grow old in their, their bodies, so to say, in their years, but their minds don't necessarily grow old. I mean, it's just possible for old people to romance, to learn, to do many, many things that youngsters are doing, and people don't realize that. People also can start new careers in their 60s. I mean, so what? It's possible as long as your mind is agile, your mind is young. I think. You can be anything, and the people have begun to recognize that. But as I said, there's still a bit of stereotype, but it's broken the old stereotype, thankfully.
Okay, that's great to know. Tell us a little bit about your own journey. You also work as a life coach, so tell us a little bit about that part of your work also.
Yes, when I did the Landmark Forum, what was there was, it made a huge difference for me, and I thought, this is something that I can do for people, and so I actually took up that, and became trained myself extensively, and became a forum leader, and I would be coaching people, and then I would also do one-on-one coaching later on, after I gave up my job at Landmark Education, as it was called then. But this is a whole space where in a conversation a lot can be achieved. People can shift. Like for example, I'll share one thing with you. Like in a Landmark Forum earlier, people would hesitate to talk about sexual abuse. In my programs, people would come out with sexual abuse, and first the girls would share at the mic, then the men started sharing at the mic, and it's possible to get complete. I want this to go out in the world, this thing. It is possible to be complete. It's possible to feel whole. It's not your fault if you were raped, if you were abused. It is not your fault, and it's possible. You don't have to suffer for it, and you don't have to be the victim. You can let go. I believe it's possible to let go, because a lot of my participants, a lot of my people I coached could actually let it go and create a new life for themselves. It's like an accident that's happened. If you've broken something, you've broken something. You've broken your head, you've broken your leg, you've broken something. You got okay. It's terrible. It's the worst thing that can happen to anybody. Worst thing. And I feel for rapists, so I feel so strongly about rape that I mean, that's the only time I think they could be hanged. I mean, it's like people will say, oh, but you can't take away somebody's life, or maybe they could be castrated, but that much I really cannot. I think that's the worst thing you can do to a woman is rape. But even there, I think there's a possibility to have a whole life, to recreate your life, to reinvent your life, and that's important to know that.
Thank you, Aruna. Thank you for that. In fact, there's one more question. It's from Supraja again. She says, I attended the Landmark Forum in Bangalore. I would like to know if there is anything that you could not take it. Sometimes we don't accept few things. So did you face anything that you could not accept while attending the course?
No, I did not, because the thing is, for life to work, I think you have to be in surrender. The more you resist, the more it will persist. That they tell you in the Landmark Forum, and this is a reality. You keep resisting something, it will keep persisting. If you just let it be, I think it will disappear. The thing is, as I said earlier, being flexible, not being rigid, and being in surrender. See, I've had a career of 50 years. I was a freelancer. I didn't know where my next job is coming from. I didn't know where my next money is coming from, even before I did the forum or anything like that. I mean, I didn't know anything. And yet I had to believe in myself. I had to trust myself. And I believe in trusting the universe, being in surrender and not resisting anything and going with the flow. and creating, and you do your work. And like, for example, I do believe in what is karmane vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, is don't wait for results. You keep doing your work, the results will come. And work kept coming to me even after the divorce. When my child, I was bringing up my son, work kept coming. Whatever I needed kept coming to me. So what do I need more for? What do I want? It's not about greed. It's like not resisting anything. Just go with the flow. I think that's what works. So even in the forum, I didn't resist any conversation. I just went with the flow, what they said.
There's another question from Ravish Pathan. He says OTT has created a platform for budding filmmaker, but it has also robbed off the viewers of theatrical and community watching experience, which had made cinema what it was. Would you advise someone who's starting out in filmmaking to make cinema with theater in mind, or should they stick to OTT only? Is there a hope for theatrical viewing to come back?
I think in these COVID times, now OTTs have taken over in the COVID times, but I am looking forward to theaters being opened again. And there will be films which really need a big screen. You know, there are films which cannot be enjoyed on the small screen. And I'm a person who love my film to be in the theater more than OTT, because, you know, there are certain kind of films which you can do one-to-one on a very personal basis, you know, you can watch. But film is a collective experience, and I've grown up like that, and I would love that. And I think when people recover from COVID, I don't know how long it will take, but I think the theaters, people will flock to the theaters again, because that's part of sharing a, you know, collective experience. And that's important. It's a social experience. So if you're making something for, you know, you just have to be sure what are you making for that. One of the things we were taught, you know, like, you know, especially when you went into advertising films, who are you making this film for? Are you making it for OTT? Then do it from a OTT perspective. Are you making it for the theater? Then make it from a theatrical perspective. So I think you have to also know who you're making this film for.
Absolutely. We hope that answers your question. One thing that we want to ask you is, did you ever think of switching roles? Because you first auditioned in FTII as an actor. So did you ever think of acting later?
No, I didn't think of acting later, because, you know, whatever I wanted to do, I was able to get it through my actors who were much better than me. You know, so that was really great, because that way I was getting to have the best of both. It was whatever I wanted was being expressed by my actor. And as a director, I could control it the way I wouldn't be able to do manipulate my own self, because I'm, you know, whatever, as an actor, but I could actually get what I wanted from the other person. So I really was, you know, actually having the best of both worlds in a way. And I think, no, I wasn't tempted to act after that, you know, though, though I explain many times, the actors tell you, the aap karke dikhaiye, you know, and you do that, but not really. I mean, you can show them, they know what to take from that, whatever you do, because all directors must know acting. And my sometimes in my you know, programs, when I'm talking in my class, people say, oh ma'am, you do acted so well, all that sort of stuff. But that's only for now. I can't, I mean, you know, that's not for me. I realize that. I think I'm better behind the camera.
Would you like to tell people who are listening in about the little FTII experience, how you went for acting, but you ended up getting direction?
That's okay. I went for, you know, I went for this audition. Actually, they called me, and it was all, the course had already started. I was already late, and they called me, and because through someone we went, and they gave me something so horrible to do. Now again, it was my judgment that came in, because I had read such good stuff, I had seen such good stuff, and I said, what is this not stuff they've given me? Yeah, this is not something that anybody would want to do. But that was a scene they had given me. It was a horrible thing. Anyway, so I was already put off by what the content, and I did it anyway, half-heartedly, and of course, it didn't work. But then they said to me, after they talked to me at length, seeing my general knowledge, seeing my background of so much literature that I had read, and whatever I was, they offered me another course. And at that time, I wanted to, I said, the next thing I would want to do is direction. And then they looked at me and they said, no, ma'am, because you have to do either, not ma'am, I mean, miss at that time, but they said, you know, you have to be either a BA or a BSc to do the direction course. But we can give you, instead of 5 years, if you do a double diploma, we can give you in 4 years, which is editing and direction. And I said, I don't know what editing is. And I went off quite haughtily, And they kept calling me back because those were the days when they wanted girls to do things in other fields and all, Indira Gandhi's time and all those days. And very condescendingly, I came back end of the first term. And I looked at what editing was. I joined editing. And I found it very easy because I do a lot of Mensa puzzles, jigsaw puzzles, even today, Sudoku, crossword puzzles. So I'm very good with all of this stuff. And I realized, except it was like a jigsaw puzzle, except the pieces were live and moving. And you had to just fit it to make a story, what comes first and what comes where and so on. And I would finish my exercise and like if the boys in my class took 4 hours to do that exercise, I would finish in 1 hour and get out and go and sit in the direction department. So what happened was, it was like I was doing both the courses simultaneously because that's what I wanted to do. And that's how I actually, and the other part was I was the only girl on this, except for 3 or 4 acting girls, I was the only other girl. So I had a whole lot of boys chasing me, which was good fun those days. Huh?
What was the year? Which year was this?
This was 1967 to 69.
And you were the only girl.
Many of you were not born. Many of your parents were also not born, I think. I'm ancient, by the way.
In fact, on that note, wanted to ask you to tell, if you could tell everyone about your autobiography. For those who don't know, Aruna has written an autobiography. So if you could tell all of us about it.
Yes, actually, the autobiography, there's so much to share and so many things that happened with me. And I thought we had a good idea to put all that. It's a lot about cinema. There is a lot about cinema. There's a lot about my own personal journey, but not too much. There's also the interesting parts are also the research we did. Like once I was doing a film on black magic. And we did a lot of research for that. And the stories are interesting. Then there was another time I worked in the red light area. Again, the thing is, I was brought up in a very protected home. We never went anywhere. Whatever you wanted was provided to you. I had not even seen my friends' houses, what they look from inside. While I was in school, if you wanted to play with friends, friends were brought to the house. You wanted to play badminton court was created in the compound, things like that. So we never went anywhere. And I didn't even know. When I moved to college, when I came to Bombay at 16, 17, I didn't even know how to go into a shop and buy anything. I mean, I was like a stupid fool, like a real country bumpkin. I didn't know. Sometimes I would leave the bill, sometimes I'd leave the money, sometimes I'd leave the product. So it was like crazy. I really had no idea how to do all this. And yeah, so having been brought up, what was I saying? I'm so sorry. I just lost track. What was your question again?
So we were asking you to talk about your autobiography a bit.
Yes. So the thing is, actually, I had a lot of things to share, and how research was very important. When I joined a medical college, I spent 2 years over there, and it was like, oh, now she's gone to the film institute. That her thing has been wasted. Those 2 years are wasted, but the 2 years were not wasted because, as I said, I was brought up in such a protected place. I had not seen death. I had not seen disease. I had not seen depravity. I had not seen poverty. I had not seen anything. So how could I ever be a filmmaker? So the universe had its own plans. They said, send her to Grand Medical College, and then let her go and learn about life. And 2 years, I saw the underbelly of a city. I saw the worst that anybody could be exposed to completely. And then I went to the Film Institute, ready, having had something about life that I knew, so that I could actually think about making something. So that was very important. So that autobiography has all these very, very interesting stories in it about how I grew up and how I discovered things for myself.
Yeah. Thank you. We could probably, people could probably look it up on Amazon and find it. So because we are Silver Talkies, one of the things we want to, and we work with older adults, one of the things we want to ask you is, one is you seem to be balancing filmmaking, your life coach, your work as a life coach. So is retirement on the horizon, or you don't even think of the term?
Not at all. I mean, for me, you know, when retirement will happen, when I pass away, when I pass on. Because see, now life is full now. As I said, I'm making films and I'm doing, you know, my coaching and I'm writing, and this is the best life I could have. Now, what more would I, and where will I retire? And what will I do? I mean, this is all that's important to me. And the best thing is, I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of people who love me. I love people, you know, so I get a lot of love back. People are, you know, reciprocating. So retiring for me means retiring from life altogether, full stop. And so I think that's it, because I cannot even imagine what retirement might be like, because this is the life that I've always, you know, I'm enjoying my life right now and I have everything that I want and I want to do.
Could you speak a bit about the importance of social, you know, having a social network of your own? How does that keep you active?
It's very important. It's very important because I think human beings are social beings basically. And it's very important to connect. If you're happy, share. If you're sad, share. If you have nothing, you want to just bitch about somebody, share. But, you know, just connecting and having, you know, having someone listen to you and you listening to someone else, it makes a lot of difference. Because you know, you don't know what people are going through. Even just providing listening goes a long way. As a coach, most of the time we end up listening to what people are saying, and then, you know, the coaching is not, may not be a very long thing, but the listening part is the bigger part. And in communication also, you know, listening is the more important part than speaking. And so when you're in communication, you're part of a whole. It's almost like that, and it works very well. So I think it's, you feel supported, you don't feel alone, and you don't have to feel alone, because there are enough people in the world to make you feel you belong. Even, I mean, it's not only, you don't have to have blood relatives, you don't have to have you know, marriage, or you don't have to have any of that kind, because friendship is something which is so free and so open, you know. And I think that's beautiful. And again, something that the universe, I think, just reach out, make friends, share good times, bad times. And as the bad times pass, the good times pass, bad times also pass, and then you suddenly find that you're on top of everything. And friends really are important, are very precious, very, very precious. So just hang on to them, don't let them go.
Thank you so much. Yes, all our social members know that.
Educated. I mean, I will always recommend you go to a film school rather than work 10 years as an assistant to somebody. So, or make your terrible mistakes that you might make outside and not get a second chance. But in a film school, you get to make your films, you get to learn. And I think that's important. And I'm a person who believes in education. I think maybe because I'm a learner for life, because I keep learning all the time, because I'm never going to arrive, you know. That's a good thing that for me, that is why I don't feel old, perhaps, because I've never arrived and I don't know what it is to arrive.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And with that, we will end this interaction. Thank you so much, Arunaji. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us. And listening to you was really inspiring for all of us. We are getting comments from everyone, including the seniors who are our members, saying that it was a very inspiring and educative talk from you. So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you
And
so much. Thank you.